Hello, you're watching ThePrint.in and I'm Nikhil Rampal. And in this special broadcast, we are going to talk about India's rising population. We all know for a fact that in 2023, India's population is expected to overtake China, making India the most populous country in the world. In fact, by some estimates, India has already surpassed China, but this unfolds into many questions. What does this mean for India's present and future? Is India's young population and its demographic dividend or a brain drain factory? What would aging in India look like? Does a higher population come with greater power? To answer all these queries, I have with me today Miss Christine Huang, who is a research analyst at the Washington, D.C. based think tank, the Pew Research Center, and is also one of the authors of the latest research on this issue. Hi, Christine. Welcome to The Print.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So my first question to you is, could you comment on India overtaking China's population? Does this add urgency for the Indian government's intervention to add more employment opportunities?
So I would say that both China and India are estimated to have more than 1.4 billion people. But while China's population is going to be declining, India's will continue to grow. And so the UN estimates that India's population will overtake China's in April of this year. And the majority of India's population will remain of working age, which would be between the ages of 15 to 64 until at least 2100. So the growing working age population may pose a challenge to India's labor market, and a lack of employment opportunities was already seen by Indians as the country's biggest challenge in 2018 when we last asked that question. And so in comparison, there will be more Chinese people outside the working age population than in it by the year 2079. And so China's population is also aging more quickly than India's. Adults ages 65 and older make up 14% of China's population, compared with 7% of India's, according to the UN.
Could you elaborate on the fact that young Indians or Indians think that employment is the biggest concern? You just cited this fact. Could you elaborate a bit on this statistic?
Yeah, absolutely. So according to our research in 2018, we asked a couple of issues for what Indians saw as the big problem for their country. And so 76% of Indians cited a lack of employment opportunities as a very big problem. And so some other concerns that Indians had about their country were some rising prices. 73% of people saw that as a very big problem, but really lack of employment opportunities took the head of that battery issue.
So is China facing a bigger aging challenge than India?
So I think in this case, China's population is facing a slightly larger aging problem than India. So I think China's population is aging more quickly than India's. Right now, 14% of China's population is 65 or older, but only 7% of India's is.
All right. So this brings us to our next question. India did not conduct its census 2021 owing to the pandemic, and reports suggest that it is unlikely that this exercise will be carried out before the 2024 elections conclude. How do you think that these projections could be closer or deviated from the real numbers?
I think from our perspective, it's hard to say exactly how close they are to the real numbers. But right now, the projections are based on a couple of key demographic indicators, including fertility, life expectancy, and migration. And so as the accuracy of those numbers change, the accuracy of the predictions will also change. And so there's some amount of uncertainty built into these specific estimates. The analysis that we conducted used the median variant for future dates, which takes the midpoint of likely outcomes, the middle number of our projections.
All right. Now, you mentioned that it's a fact that India's median age is 28. By comparison, the median age in the US is 38, and it's 39 in China. What does this mean for India?
So India's median age is markedly lower than that of the US or China. And so, as you said, the median ages of the US and China are already 38 and 39 respectively. And as we talked about earlier, India is aging a little bit less quickly than in China. And so India's median age is not expected to reach 38 until 2050, so the comparative age of China. And so the share of working age adults in China is also projected to shrink more rapidly than in India. And so an aging population in those countries may place additional strains on healthcare and other welfare systems and affect economic growth.
You also mentioned that nearly 40% of India's population is below the age of 25. Recently, India's Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation said that India has entered a point of inflection and that its population has officially started to age. How is India going to face the aging problem and compared to its neighbors and some of the leading economies?
So, according to UN projections, the share of Indians who are right now 25 and younger is pretty high, but is beginning to shrink. And so, while 43% of Indians are 25 and younger as of this year, only about a quarter will be in this age group by 2100. And so, in comparison, the share of Indians who are 65 and older is expected to triple from roughly 7% right now to 30% in 2100.
Is India's demographic dividend its asset or liability?
So demographic dividends can either be an asset or a liability, depending on a variety of factors. And so whether India's demographic dividend will play out as one or the other, or even both, will likely be related to systemic factors with India, such as the availability of employment opportunities in the country and the strength of India's healthcare sector.
Okay. You also cited United Nations data showing that around 300,000 people migrated from India in just 2021. If these numbers are likely to be students or workers trying to settle abroad, how much of a loss or brain drain is happening to the country? What does this tell about us? What does it tell about the opportunities at present?
So based on the United Nations data we have access to, it's hard to answer that question exactly. The data shows the number of migrants leaving India, but it does not offer further details about who these migrants are, so kind of what they're leaving for or any other demographic indicators about them. But based on their data, around 300,000 people migrated from India in 2021 alone, but the total number of Indians living abroad, based on other years in the past, is much greater. And prior Pew research has also shown India to be both a top source of and destination for the world's migrants.
Right. Okay. The findings also show that Indian women's fertility rates are on a gradual decline due to a variety of factors. In how many years or decline approximately could we witness a shrinkage in our population like Japan or China?
So based on the United Nations middle of the road estimates, which we talked about earlier, I think India's population is expected to continue to slowly increase until 2020 or 2064. And then at that point, only then will it peak at 1.7 billion people and begin to decline.
Okay. Your analysis says fertility rates vary widely by community type and states in India. What do your findings indicate as the reasons for this?
So fertility rates are influenced by a variety of factors, including demographic, social, and economic factors. Some of these factors include the age composition of childbearing women, the share of childbearing women who are married, and the economic climate. And so as these factors vary across the regions, fertility rates will also, follow suit.
Okay. Now, recently, an Australia-based think tank, the Lowies Institute, released its Asia Power Index report for 2023, which placed India at the fourth rank for its overall influence in the region. But its score was so low that it could not be considered a major or a superpower. What do you think? Are bigger populations not offering bigger influence anymore? How can India use its youth power?
So in 2022, we asked about a couple of countries and what their influence in the world was. And that survey showed that a median of 48% across the 19 advanced and emerging economies that we surveyed said that India's influence in the world in recent years has been staying about the same. So kind of echoing what Lowy Institute is saying. And so a median of 28% said that India's influence has been growing stronger. And Australians actually were the most likely to consider India's influence growing stronger, with 36% of Australians holding this view. And so similar median said the same about Germany's influence growing stronger, and fewer said that France and the UK's influence has grown stronger. In comparison, more said that the influence of China, Russia, and the US has become stronger. And so it's hard to say whether or not this is related to population size, given the variety of countries we've asked about. And so Actually, sorry.
I think that pretty much sums up our conversation. Well, whether India monetizes on its population or not, that would depend on several parameters and factors as we know as of now. And going ahead, thank you so much, Christine, and thank you everyone for joining this special broadcast. We'll catch up soon. Till then, keep following theprint.in.